Mia looked on in disbelief at the unfolding situation, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms as she struggled to contain her rage. Her voice dripped with venom when she finally spoke.
That fucking card has to be a fake. Either that or the little shit's stolen it. There's no way in hell a broke-ass loser like him has connections.
A fake? That is simply not possible.
The manager looked at the couple, his eyes narrowing in disgust. He concluded that Noah had been deliberately lying to him, and he was determined not to let this entitled brat cause any more trouble.
I don't want to disturb our honored guest anymore with your ranting. Your behavior is an embarrassment to this establishment.
How fucking dare you speak to me like that, you fat piece of shit? Do you know who my father is? Aren't you worried about what I'm going to say to Mr. Felicia when I see him next? I'll have your job for this, you incompetent swine.
Before Larry could reply, Jacob spoke up, his voice calm but laced with authority.
These two have completely ruined my meal with their petty drama. I want them thrown out on their asses, now. Or should I give Gavin a call and let him know how his VIP guests are being treated?
How dare that fucking street rat ask for me to be thrown out? It's him who should be told to get the fuck out. Do you know who I am? My family could buy and sell this entire fucking hotel.
I'm sorry, sir, but I can't allow you to spoil the meals of our other guests. Leave, please, before I have security drag you out.
I have a platinum card, you jackass. How can you possibly treat a guest like me with such disrespect?
The other guest has a Supreme VIP card, and he's entitled to the best service available. Your platinum card doesn't mean anything compared to that.
As he spoke, Larry gestured two burly security guards over, their faces impassive but their eyes gleaming with the prospect of some action.
These people are just leaving. Escort them out of the door, please.
As the situation escalated, Jacob decided to turn the tables on Noah.
You know, Larry, I don't think Mr. Sanford here quite understands his place. Maybe you should explain it to him. In detail.
Sir, I'm not sure.
Come on, Larry, show some backbone. Show him exactly what you think of his platinum status.
Larry's eyes darted between Jacob and Noah, then hardened with resolve. This incident was not the first when Noah insulted Larry. The poor guy had no other option than to endure it as Noah had a platinum membership. Today, however, was different. Larry grabbed Noah's collar and slapped him hard across the face. Noah caught his stinging cheek and tumbled to the ground. He could already feel his cheeks swelling and a tooth loose from the impact of Larry's slap.
How dare you, you fucking...
No! How dare you! You come in here throwing tantrums like a child. Well, guess what? It's time for the children to leave. Remember this slap the next time you want to act like a hotshot punk.
Jacob watched, a smirk playing on his lips as Larry continued his tirade.
Gentlemen, please throw this jerk and that bitch out. And feel free to take the scenic route.
Noah was about to continue protesting, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but the two men took an arm each and led him to the door. He struggled pathetically, his designer shoes squeaking on the polished floor.
You can't do this to me. I'll sue. I'll destroy this place. My father will hear about this.
With a final heave, the guards unceremoniously tossed him out onto the street, his expensive suit collecting dirt as he sprawled on the pavement. Mia looked on in horror as she rushed after him, her high heels clacking on the sidewalk.
Noah, are you all right? Those bastards can't treat us like this.
She asked as she tried in vain to help him to his feet, her manicured hands struggling to lift his dead weight. But Noah lay on the ground, groaning in pain for several moments before getting awkwardly to his feet. It was the peak time for guests, and there was a steady stream of customers arriving at the hotel. Some of them looked at Noah disapprovingly, whispering and pointing, while others simply stepped around him as if he were garbage on the street. He felt utterly humiliated, his face burning with shame.
I'm not fucking done with Jacob. That piece of shit will pay for this humiliation.
He muttered under his breath as he walked away quickly, eager to get out of the sight of the arriving guests. Mia tottered after him, struggling to keep up in her high heels. Back inside the restaurant, Jacob had no desire to continue eating. He ate a few more reluctant mouthfuls and got up to leave. Seeing Jacob's dissatisfaction, the manager approached Jacob, wringing his hands nervously.
Sir, I can't apologize enough for this disturbance. please allow me to comp your meal and offer you a bottle of our finest champagne.
Thanks. But no thanks. I just want to leave.
Having left the hotel, Jacob walked to the nearest bus stop, feeling dejected he hadn't been able to get a job. He decided to go back to his dorm, his feet dragging with each step. As he waited at the crowded bus stop for the bus to arrive, he began to wish that he had a car. The thought of being crammed into a hot, sweaty bus was almost unbearable. Once he was finally on the bus, he realized it was even more overcrowded than he had feared. Bodies pressed against him from all sides, the smell of sweat and cheap perfume filling his nostrils.
If only I had enough goddamn money, I'd be able to buy a fucking car. I'm sick and tired of being jammed in like sardines in a can. One Supreme VIP card doesn't change the fact that I'm still broke as hell.
He grabbed hold of a pole to steady himself as the bus went around a sharp corner, cursing under his breath as someone's elbow dug into his ribs. Then, the bus stopped at a stop and even more people got on, making it even more crowded. Jacob felt like he could barely breathe. In the bustle, Jacob found himself pressed up against an attractive young woman. The driver braked suddenly, and the woman edged closer to him to avoid falling over, her body flush against his. Jacob was stunned by her sudden closeness and began to feel a little awkward. Feeling his closeness, the woman looked up at him accusingly, her eyes flashing with annoyance. But when she noticed both that he was handsome and that he looked as surprised as her expression softened.
Sorry about that. Crazy driver, huh?
No worries. It happens.
Just then, a man wearing steamed-up glasses pushed his way between Jacob and the woman. Taking advantage of the situation on the bus, the man shuffled up closer to the woman, pressing his body against hers in a way that was clearly intentional. Jacob looked on in irritation, wondering how the man could be so shameless in his approach.
Hey buddy, why don't you back off a bit? There's barely any room as it is.
Mind your own business, kid. This ain't your concern.
The young woman on the bus felt a warm body press up against her. Although she had thought the man behind her seemed handsome and nice, she was irritated that he would take advantage of the situation, and she looked back to tell him to give her some space. When she saw another man in glasses leering back at her, she felt a wave of anger wash over her. The handsome young man had disappeared and had been replaced by someone who was smiling at her in an unsettling way. As the man moved even closer to her, the woman let out a alarm. The bus driver swerved when he heard the sudden noise, and then stepped heavily on the brake, narrowly avoiding a crash with an oncoming vehicle. The bus came to a stop at the side of the road. The young woman, angered by the man's presumptuousness, reached out and scratched the man's face. She shouted,
"What do you think you're doing? Get away from me!"
Shocked, the man yelled out in pain and clasped his hand to his face where the woman's nails had drawn blood. Several nearby men looked over and stepped toward the man, ready to protect the woman from any further unwanted advances. But the spectacled man quickly put his hand in his jacket and took out a knife. He looked at the other men.
"I don't think any of you want to get involved in my business today, do you?"
He asked menacingly. Jacob looked on, shocked that someone could be so bold in broad daylight. The men who, a moment before, had been willing to protect the woman, raised their hands in submission and stepped backward, out of range of the knife. The other passengers on the bus saw the developing situation and all got off hurriedly, leaving only the young woman, the man with the knife, and Jacob. Despite the appearance of the knife, the woman remained defiant.
"You filthy monster, stay away from me."
Jacob watched the woman as she continued to throw insults at the man with the knife. He felt ashamed of his own inaction. But the man holding the knife had started to gather his composure, and he looked threateningly at the woman who had rejected him.
"You should be grateful I even took an interest in you. You're gonna regret scratching my face."
Jacob couldn't stand by anymore. He shouted,
Hey, asshole, leave her alone.
The man turned on Jacob.
"What, do you want to meddle in my business?"
I don't want to meddle in your business, just leave her alone. No one needs to get hurt.
"I'm glad you know what's good for you. Now get out of here."
Just as the man seemed to relax momentarily, Jacob rushed forward, using his palm to strike the man hard on his wrist. With a yell of pain, the man dropped the knife, and it thudded noisily on the floor of the bus. Jacob twisted his body to the side and aimed a side thrust kick at the man's chest, sending him through the bus door and into a pine tree by the sidewalk. The man let out a deep groan of pain as he felt the sharp needles from the tree sticking into his body. He rolled over on the ground, unable to get to his feet. Several others stepped forward and detained the man until the police arrived. Jacob watched as the police handcuffed the man and took him away in their car. He looked over at the young woman and noticed that she was looking at him with a resentful glare. Jacob got back on the bus, and soon after, it drove off. A short while later, the bus stopped at a well-known street in Oakdale, where there was a range of antique stores. Although Jacob had studied in Oakdale for several years, he hadn't ever been there. As he had nothing else to do, he decided to wander along the street, looking at the stores and stalls on either side. He was surprised by how few customers there were, and wondered if it was normally that quiet. In the street, he saw a man who looked like a farmer entering one of the stores called Taylor's Antiques. Intrigued, Jacob followed the man in. The interior of the store was decorated in an old-fashioned style. Jacob watched as the man approached the counter.
"Excuse me, do you buy paintings here?"
The man asked. As he spoke, he placed the picture and unwrapped the cloth that had been protecting it. The owner of the store looked at the man with a shifty gaze. To Jacob, it seemed that the owner was looking for any opportunity to make money, as he didn't look at all trustworthy. Jacob had never taken a great interest in fine art, but he was intrigued to see how the situation would develop, so he looked on. The painting was about 3 feet wide and just over 1 foot tall. It was of a mountain that looked ancient and majestic, and Jacob was impressed by the simple but elegant style of the artist. He noticed that in the lower right corner, there was a mark, somewhat blurred, that detailed the name of the artist. The owner of the antique shop took a magnifying glass and examined the painting carefully. He scrutinized the picture from top to bottom, and then carefully looked at the signature and thought for a moment. After a while, he put down the magnifying glass and said with no interest,
"Although the inscription on the painting says Ben Gautier, the picture seems to be a counterfeit. It's not worth much. Maybe you should try somewhere else."
The farmer looked disappointed.
"How is this possible? This painting has been passed in my family for generations. Is there any chance you could be mistaken?"
The store owner smiled at the man, adopting a kindly expression.
Although Gautier is a famous artist, most of the paintings that carry his signature are fakes. I'm quite certain that this is a copy, but I do feel sorry for you. I'm guessing that you've come a long way to get here. How about this? I'll pay for your transport costs. How about we say $50, and I'll take it off your hands?
The farmer knew nothing about fine art, and had no idea if the man was speaking the truth. He looked at him with suspicion in his eyes, however.
$50? You must be joking. Are you sure you're not trying to cheat me?"
He exclaimed. The store owner looked offended.
I'll have you know that I run an honest business, and I never take advantage of customers. I only make the offer out of kindness because I see you've traveled along to get here. If I'm honest, this painting is worth next to nothing, so feel free to take it away with you.
The farmer looked at the store owner, and his resolve started to waver as he wondered what he should do. The man selling the picture looked at the store owner.
"I'll give it to you for $200.
Look, how about I give you $120? How would you feel about that?
After more bargaining, they finally agreed on a price of $150. Jacob watched in amazement as a pale green mist seemed to flow out of the painting. He thought,
There's more to that painting than meets the eye. If it really was a fake, there wouldn't be such an ancient aura coming from it.
As Jacob looked on, the store owner paid the farmer the money, and the man left, seemingly pleased with the outcome.
Stupid bumpkin.
The store owner muttered as the door closed. Although he was confident that the painting was a copy, he knew that it was high quality and that he could sell it for a decent profit. The thought even occurred to him that he might be able to pass it off as an original to a gullible customer. The store owner hung the painting on the wall and then continued going about his business. More customers entered the store, and Jacob pretended to look at some of the merchandise before wandering over to the painting that had just been bought. The store owner immediately noticed Jacob's interest in the painting.
It seems like you have a good eye for quality,
the man said to Jacob.
That's rather impressive for someone so young. My son is about your age, and all he wants to do is laze around and chase women all day.
He was well versed in how to flatter a potential customer, and had found that people were more willing to part with their money once they had been complimented. But Jacob ignored the comment.
Are you interested in selling this painting?
The owner clapped his hands excitedly.
This young man is an original painting by Ben Gautier. It's worth a lot and would be an excellent investment.
Jacob cast a playful glance at the man, and then frowned.
Please don't try to take advantage of me just because I'm young.
The man nodded in acknowledgement, suddenly aware that he wouldn't be able to persuade Jacob to pay the price that an original would be worth.
It seems that you really do know what you're talking about. I'll be straight with you. Although this is a copy, it is a very high-quality copy and has some collection value.
The man held up 3 fingers, and Jacob guessed that he meant $3,000. Jacob shook his head.
You're still trying to take advantage of me.
Jacob held up 3 fingers of his own, and the store owner knew that Jacob meant $300.
You have to be kidding. Now it's you who's trying to take advantage of me.
All right, you tell me a reasonable price then.
How about 2,000?
How about cutting that in half? To be honest, I don't actually like this painting much, but I have a relative who I think would like it, so I'm happy to buy it as a present. But only for the right price.
The man whistled through his teeth and frowned.
Look, I have several store assistants I have to pay. I might look wealthy, but there are some pretty hefty costs when running a business. I really can't lower the price that far. Let's settle on 1,500. How about that?
Sensing that the man wouldn't lower the price any further, Jacob agreed.
It's a deal.
The store owner smiled and took the picture off the wall. Then Jacob settled the bill at the counter. The money Jacob had spent was almost all he had for his basic expenses, so he didn't have much left to live on. The man handed Jacob a receipt and smiled again.
Young man, if you're ever interested in buying anything else, you know where I am.
Just as Jacob was about to reply, he heard a voice behind him.
Hey, a Ben Gautier landscape painting.
Jacob turned and saw a middle-aged man looking at the painting with an excited expression.
Can I take a look at your new purchase?
Sure,
Jacob replied, handing the picture to the man. The man looked it over carefully before sighing.
It's just a copy. Even so, it's a rather good copy. Would you be interested in selling it to me?
The store owner looked on in dismay and couldn't help but comment.
How much would you be willing to pay?
The thought that he might have missed out on getting a higher price filled him with regret. The middle-aged man smiled.
I suppose I might go as high as $6,000.
$6,000.
The store owner exclaimed, shaking his head. He had missed out on the opportunity of making a considerable profit, and he was beginning to feel stupid. He wondered,
what the hell was I thinking? If only I'd held out for a better price.
But he was surprised when Jacob shook his head.
Sorry, but I don't want to sell it.
The store owner breathed an audible sigh of relief. The thought that he could watch the painting being resold in front of him for so much more than he had sold it for was almost too much to bear. The middle-aged man frowned.
Young man, I really like this painting. How about I double my price? I'll give you $12,000 for it. I guarantee you that is much more than its market value.
The owner of the store began to feel dizzy at the thought of how much money he had missed out on. He thought,
if only this rich fool had come in 10 minutes earlier, who knows how much I could have had for the painting.
But still, Jacob was unsure of what to do.